When the scale of today's attacks became clear, the Prime Minister Tony Blair promised that Britain would do whatever it took to help America track down and punish those responsible for the attacks. He said this is not a battle between the United States and terrorism, but a battle between terrorists and the democratic world. Here's our senior political correspondent, Joe Andrews.
For Tony Blair, news of this catastrophe came not long before he was due to give an important speech to the TUC in Brighton.
I don't believe it would be appropriate to carry on the speech that I was going to give to you today.
Instead, he cut short his visit and headed straight back to Downing Street to be briefed on the terrible events in America, before being joined by senior members of the Cabinet as well as military and security chiefs for a meeting of COBRA, the Cabinet's Special Emergency Planning Committee.
We have stepped up security at airports to the highest levels. No flights will take off from the United Kingdom for which we cannot apply the highest standards of security for aircrew and passengers. Private flights have been stopped except where specifically authorised. Flight paths into London have been changed so there will be no civil overflights of central London. Security has been increased across the full range of government buildings and military premises. The police across the whole of the UK are on full alert. All our defence facilities around the world have been moved to high alert to ensure the protection of British service personnel.
There was also a message for the American people and for their president, who up until now has shown every sign of wishing to be the US's most isolationist leader since before the Second World War.
This is not a battle between the United States of America and terrorism, but between the free and democratic world and terrorism. We therefore here in Britain stand shoulder to shoulder with our American friends in this hour of tragedy, and we, like them, will not rest until this evil is driven from our world.
The Cabinet Committee meets again early tomorrow to review UK security. Joe Andrews, ITN, Downing Street.
Let's go to our political editor, John Sargent at Westminster. John, give us a sense of the mood in Whitehall tonight after those outrages in the United States today.
Well, I think one's got to accept that this is something that Britain of all places used to, this threat of a terrorist attack, but on nothing like this scale. The shock that it sent through not just the Prime Minister but his senior ministers, we could all see in Brighton. The Prime Minister was preparing for his speech. He then heard about this attack. He thought, would it be appropriate to make a major speech to the Trades Union Congress? He decided he could not, but there was a half-an-hour delay, and then it was back to London for this emergency meeting. But the sense of the scale of all this, the horror of it, and the implications were felt instantly over here among ministers. And the piece that you've just played of the Prime Minister talking about standing shoulder to shoulder with America is very significant. This is not Tony Blair sympathising with the Americans for their problem. He's saying very definitely it's Britain's problem too.
And going on from that, one can understand, one would be absolutely sure that this would be happening, that there must be top-level conversations going on between the top people here in our intelligence services and those in America, because the Prime Minister did pledge to do whatever he can, whatever Britain can, to make sure that America is not isolated in this way.
That's right. I mean, the point to bear in mind is that the British and the American intelligence services have a long-standing, immensely close relationship. So if it is, as we've seen, an intelligence failure on a big scale, the British intelligence services will also be thinking, why couldn't we have helped? Did we get something wrong? So what's happening tonight behind the scenes is going through all the data, all the intercepted messages, anything which would throw light on who organised this attack and why.
John Sargent, for the time being, thank you. As you heard from James Mates a few minutes ago, more than 7 hours on from the first explosion in New York, there's still no clear idea about how many people might have been killed or injured. Predictions from police and fire chiefs are grim. They say they expect it to run into thousands. The World Trade Center alone is workplace of 50,000 people. The first plane crashed into the building just before 9 in the morning, in a city where many people arrive at their desks early. Here's KATIE DERHAM.
There had been terror in the skies. Now there was terror and panic on the streets. It couldn't have happened at a worse time. It was rush hour, the start of a busy working day in the busiest area of the city. Crowds of ordinary people caught up in an extraordinary and horrific event.
I was in the basement of the elevator. All of a sudden it blew up. We heard a crash. The elevator opened up. The guy came out burning. I grabbed him. His skin was falling off. I dragged him out. I pulled him out of the parking lot and gave him to EMS. Everybody else was just going all crazy and nuts. People are jumping out. People flailing, still alive, still jumping out. That's what I saw.
It's not yet known how many people have died, but the death toll could run into tens of thousands. The passengers on the 4 stricken jets are almost certainly dead. On a normal day, up to 50,000 people worked in the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. There were often as many as 5,000 tourists visiting the famous landmark. Many will not have escaped. And then there will be inevitable casualties from the flying debris and the later explosions.
I would expect a high number of fatalities in a situation like that. The whole building has collapsed. Clearly, any survivors will be multiply injured, or there's always a few people get away with minimal injuries, but I would expect a high number of multiply injured people, and the difficulties will be getting access to them by the medical and emergency services, and the scenes that meets them could be quite traumatic or horrific.
Emergency services were quickly on the scene trying to help people escape the damaged towers before they collapsed, but they too found themselves caught up in the catastrophe. Local hospitals have been inundated, though there have been logistical problems getting victims to waiting doctors, and aid agencies have set up facilities near the scene.
We have shelters both in New York City and in Washington, D.C. that are set up to help people. It is still chaos right now. We are in the process of ramping up our operations. There's so much work to be done, and we're in the process of doing that right now. We have about 50,000 units of blood that are available for the affected areas.
It will be days before the true scale of this tragedy is known. Meanwhile, the rescue operations in downtown Manhattan and Washington continue. Tonight, they're feverishly searching for survivors. KATIE DERHAM, ITN.
Understandably, communications with New York are very difficult tonight, and as KATIE DERHAM said, a massive rescue operation is still going on in the city. But joining us live from New York is the CNN correspondent Richard Roth. Richard Roth, what's the latest from Manhattan tonight?
New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani says the death toll may be more than the New York City people can bear. It's feared in the tens of thousands as the 2 large World Trade Center buildings collapsed. Terrorists tried to bring it down from the ground in 1993. Today they succeeded from the air. Jet fuel, paper, furniture, officials say, are now burning in the building. A short while ago, one Port Authority police official said that they couldn't have the search go on until they could, the fires are out. But New York City Mayor Giuliani said a search and rescue operation is kind of beginning. He said there are some 1,500 people at Liberty State Park, which is a nearby open area, the so-called walking wounded, he called them. 600 in local hospitals, 150 critical, removed by emergency medical personnel. New York City's 170 hospitals are all geared up for this. A steady procession of emergency vehicles, sirens, rescue vehicles, people with cars, vehicles, ambulances from all over this New York City area have been pouring down on one of the major west side of Manhattan highways. Behind me, you are seeing thousands of people, an escape from New York here. They are going to West Side Ferry to get over to the nearby state of New Jersey. All the tunnels leading out of Manhattan were closed, and many of the rail lines. People here stunned, shocked. They kept marching ahead. They waited here on this line for hours. They knew that behind them they had escaped with their lives. Many of them had been in the Trade Center and had gone out just in time. I personally saw the #1 World Trade Center building come down. There was the panic. People started running, and of course all of the smoke and carnage. Mayor Giuliani asking everyone in New York now to say a prayer. Trevor.
Richard, what's the mood in the city? I heard one of your colleagues on CNN earlier this evening saying that, after all, people in New York felt that they were reasonably safe from this kind of thing.
Well, New York City had a bad crime reputation in the 60s and 70s and part of the 80s, and they certainly were feeling more comfortable in this city of 17 to 20 million in surrounding parts. But They had never seen anything like this before. They know of the bombing attempt in 1993 on the Trade Center. There have been hijackings, there have been hurricanes. This one, I don't think has even sunk in yet with the people online. They were leaving work early, their offices were closed down, they couldn't reach people on their cell phones, but they were calm. It's an orderly departure from New York. I wouldn't describe it as angry right now. I think when they see their morning newspapers and they go home and see the video of what they escaped, I think the mood may change.
Richard Roth in New York, thank you.
I don't believe it would be appropriate to carry on the speech that I was going to give to you today.
Instead, he cut short his visit and headed straight back to Downing Street to be briefed on the terrible events in America. Before being...
Flights will take off from the United Kingdom, for which we cannot apply the highest standards of security for aircrew and passengers. Private flights have been stopped except where specifically authorised. Flight paths into London.
When the scale of today's attacks became clear, the Prime Minister Tony Blair promised that Britain would do whatever it took to help America track down and punish those responsible for the attacks. He said this is not a battle between the United States and terrorism, but a battle between terrorists and the democratic world. Here's our senior political correspondent, Joe Andrews.
For Tony Blair, news of this catastrophe came not long before he was due to give an important speech to the TUC in Brighton, being joined by senior members of the Cabinet as well as military and security chiefs for a meeting of COBRA, the Cabinet's Special Emergency Planning Committee.
We have stepped up security at airports to the highest levels. No flight